In our last episode, we followed the ride of Manfred of Sicily. The illegitimate son of the late Emperor Frederick II of Swabia, he had climbed with breathtaking speed from upstart prince to king of Sicily and then would-be emperor. He ruled his turbulent realm with an iron fist, yet within a few short years, that fist was closing on nothing but sand, and the young king had yet not realized it. Far from Sicily's sun-drenched shores, storm clouds were gathering. They were about to take the shape of Charles of Anjou, Prince of France, the Papacy chosen champion. Soon, the Kingdom of Sicily would learn to fear the golden fleur-de-lis of France. The open clash between Manfred and the Papacy had weakened Ghibelline fortunes throughout Italy. Nowhere was this clearer than in Siena. After Montaperti, the city had embraced a staunchly Ghibelline government, openly allied to the King of Sicily. Yet Pope Urban IV's long-standing interdict, imposed in punishment for Siena's Swabian sympathies, gradually sowed unrest. Many citizens, especially those whose livelihoods depended on dealing with the Curia, grew resentful of the harsh economic and spiritual isolation. On the 30th of April 1262, street riots erupted between Guelphs and Ghibellines. They were crushed with violence, ending in the murder of a Ghibelline leader. By December, a number of leading families, the Salimbeni, Tolomei, and Piccolomini among them, abandoned Siena and sought refuge in the fortress of Radicofani under papal protection. Urban IV welcomed the exiles, formally restored them to the church, and thereby gave official birth to Siena's Guelph Party, which began to reorganize itself politically and militarily under papal patronage. The Pope soon turned the screw on Florence as well. Although now ruled by pro-Swabian Ghibellines, the city depended on its merchant fortunes. In August 1263, Urban IV stuck at those interests, ordering the seizure of Florentine wares brought in Flanders and French fairs. The effect was swift. By the end of the month, many of Florence's great merchants had sworn loyalty to the Pope in order to recover their goods and their trade. Emblematic was the decision taken by the powerful merchant Cavalcante degli Spini. On the 12th of August 1263, together with 16 partners, he agreed to leave Florence before the end of October and seek refuge in church-loyal towns, even pledging military assistance to the Florentine Guelphs exiled in Lucca. In this way, the papal offensive steadily sapped the Tuscan Ghibelline front, stripping it of vital capital and of key men who now placed themselves directly under papal authority. Throughout 1264, the political and military struggle sharpened dramatically. On one side stood Charles of Anjou, Pope Urban's chosen king of Sicily, striving to raise an invasion force for Italy. Papal propaganda and fiery preachers exhorted French nobles and knights to enlist in what Urban IV styled a genuine crusade against Manfred. Yet in France, the levy of money and men advanced only with difficulty, hampered by the indifference of many barons and the cool hostility of King Louis IX, who cared far more for planning another Eastern Crusade than for Italian affairs. Determined to preempt his enemies and strike at the root of the threat, Manfred resolved upon an audacious move, seizing of Rome and capturing the Pope, who was then residing in Orvieto. In the summer of 1264, 3 separate columns set out at once. From the east advanced a force of German knights and Saracen archers under Percevalle Doria, threading through the Duchy of Spoleto with orders to snatch the pontiff from Orvieto itself. From the south, the Neapolitan captain Riccardo Filangieri was to cross the river Liri and occupy Rome. From the north, a cavalry dispatched by Giordano Italiano in the Marche would back the Roman Ghibelline leader Pietro di Vico, who was to raise the city in revolt at the decisive moment. On paper, the enterprise looked overwhelming. In practice, it was a disaster. Pietro di Vico, after an initial triumph at Sutri, was driven out and his rising in the Eternal City collapsed under pressure from Angevin troops led by Jacques Gantelme. Percevalle Doria, drowned by accident in the river Nera near Arrone. Leaderless and shaken, his men were quickly beaten back by a papal host under Bonifacio of Canossa. Filangieri, hesitant and overcautious, scarcely crossed the frontier before retreating, fearful of malaria and, above all, of the lack of coordinated support from the other wings. The whole Sicilian offensive foundered, undone by faulty tactics, wretched communication, and most curious of all, Manfred's own choice to remain safe in the castle of Lagopesole instead of commanding in person. The failure dealt the king a bitter political and moral blow. Papal propagandists seized on the episode, decrying the brutality of an assault aimed at kidnapping the Vicar of Christ and denouncing Manfred's use of Saracens bowmen, those vaunted archers of Lucera, proud legacy of his father Frederick II, as an outrage beyond forgiveness. While the Roman and Papal front grew even stronger, Tuscany offered a final twist on irony. While the Roman and Papal front grew even stronger, Tuscany offered a final twist of irony. On the 14th of August 1264, the last Guelph stronghold, Lucca, fell to the combined Ghibelline army of Pisa and Florence. Yet that isolated success could not outweigh the collapse of Manfred's grand design. Across Europe, his stature was gravely diminished. The king who dreamed of empire now stood exposed, his reputation bleeding from self-inflicted wounds. On the 2nd of October 1264, Pope Urban IV died in Perugia, leaving Italy fatally polarized. After a tormented 4-month conclave, the cardinals chose a Frenchman. On the 5th of February 1265, Guy Fouquet became Clement IV. A seasoned jurist and former bishop of Narbonne, Fouquet was known for his sympathy towards Charles of Anjou, though he remained wary of ceding too much temporal ground to the Angevin dynasty. On the 30th of April 1265, Clement sealed a pact with Charles. In return for the Sicilian crown, the Angevin promised to relinquish the title of Senator of Rome after 3 years and to refrain from any direct bid for Tuscany or the cities of northern Italy. He also guaranteed the privileges of the kingdom's nobles and comuni, hoping thereby to erode their loyalty to Manfred. Lacking any dynastic claim, Charles' investiture was justified by Clement with reference to the Treaty of 1059 between Pope Nicholas II and Robert Guiscard, which affirmed the pontiff's right to appoint fresh rulers in time of necessity. News of the pact reached Manfred swiftly. Determined to seize Rome before the Angevin host could arrive, he dispatched from Foggia on May 24th, 1265, a manifesto to the Romans, drafted by the brilliant chancery rhetorician Pietro da Prezza. Addressed to the city's elite, the letter called for an uprising against Charles of Anjou and offered protection and favor to all Romans who would rally to the sworn cause. This appeal, alas, arrived too late. Only 3 days earlier, on May 21st, Charles had sailed into the Tiber with a Provençal fleet of 27 galleys and 13 smaller vessels, landing some 500 dismounted heavy cavalry and 1,000 crossbowmen. The sudden, well-executed descent galvanized the Guelph front and gravely undermined Manfred's position in central Italy. The Sicilian king, nevertheless, mustered a massive counter-offensive, summoning every available force. German mercenaries, Apulian knights, Saracen archers from all across Israel. On June 7, 1265, writing from Benevento, he ordered his Tuscan vicar, Guido Novello, to march on Rome and close a pincer around the newcomer. The effort proved futile. By the end of June, the Tuscan Ghibellines had been soundly beaten at Radicofani and driven back towards Siena, while Charles consolidated Guelph control through the region. By late July, Manfred made one last bid to seize Rome from the east, advancing through Tivoli, yet the city's formidable walls barred his path. Meanwhile, Charles of Anjou maneuvered deftly in Manfred's rear, menacing the supply lines and preventing any junction of the king's scattered columns. Forced to abandon the attempt, Manfred fell back on his own lands. By mid-August, he had withdrawn first to Capua and then to his favorite fortress of Lagopesole. The Sicilian contingents left behind the filtered home empty-handed. A second unequivocal reverse, military and political, had cleared the road for Charles' advance into the Kingdom of Sicily. In January 1266, the Angevin host crossed the frontier almost unopposed, smashing the outworks Manfred has so carefully prepared. The fall of Roccadarce and the decisive action at San Germano, where the Franco-Provençal knights stormed the Swabian field fortification and scattered the German and Saracen cavalry, brought the entire defensive system crashing down. Sensing the Hohenstaufen grasp falter, southern towns, Gaeta, Venafro, Sessalunca, and above all Naples, rose in revolt and flung their gates wide for the invader. Capua too grew untenable. Manfred, his army demoralized and depleted, resolved to retire towards Apulia and join the still intact forces in Abruzzo under Conrad of Antioch. He never made it. Near Benevento, Charles' army overtook him. It was February 26, 1266, and the two hosts braced for the clash that posterity would remember as the Battle of Benevento. We do not have exact figures for the two armies. Both had more than 3,000 knights, followed by an unspecified number of infantrymen. Manfred divided his force into 3 battalions, deploying in the front line his formidable Saracen archers, behind whom was a battalion of 1,200 German mercenaries protected by the first plate armors, a novelty for the time. The second battalion was composed of Italian mercenaries and Saracen light cavalry, while the third included various loyal feudal lords of the Kingdom of Sicily, led by Manfred himself. Charles d'Anjou had adopted a similar three-battalion arrangement with troops from France, Languedoc, Flanders, and a large group of Guelph knights from Florence. In the cold morning, the Imperial light cavalry initiated the battle, advancing on the bridge protected by archers, but were soon repelled by the 1st Angevin battalion. Perhaps rashly, perhaps by mistake, the battalion of heavy German cavalry suddenly charged against the French troops. Their charge was devastating, and they advanced inexorably through the enemy ranks. The weapons could do nothing against the heavy plate armors. Charles d'Anjou also sent the 2nd Battalion, hoping to slow down the Imperial advance. It was in the heat of battle that the infantry discovered the weak point of the plate armors. The armpits were not covered. The German mercenaries began to fall, and the cry of to the swords, strike the steeds! They began to hit the German mounts more vulnerable than their riders. Even the Angevin archers lowered their aim, and chaos ensued. The Imperial troops fell back. The French conquered the bridge and quickly surrounded Manfred's camp. Seeing the imminent defeat, various nobles of Sicily turned their backs on the king, leaving him alone to defend himself with a few loyal companions. Legend has that among them stood the aging knight Occorsius, who had served the father Frederick II with the very same resolve that he now showed to the son Manfred. The knight turned to his king and said, "Where now are your fiddlers? Where are your poets, whom you loved more than knights and esquires, who hoped the foe would dance to the sweet tones?" Manfred, in a last heroic gesture, exchanged his royal surcoat with that of a friend, and threw himself into the fray, hoping to turn the tide of the battle in a third desperate assault. It is said that he was wounded in the chest, but continued to fight until a blow to the face split his forehead, killing him. Manfred's host was cut to pieces in a brutal, desperate clash. So many fell that the field lay carpeted with the bodies of men and horses alike. The horror impressed itself on the chronicler Bishop Saba Malaspina, who wrote, "So great, therefore, was the slaughter of the fighters that, on the battlefield, completely covered by the bodies of the slain, no empty spot remained. The carcasses of the horses lay upon the corpses of men. Hardly could an uninjured corpse be found, for each lay mutilated by the force of mighty blows. And there they lay, bereft of their proper form, the indistinguishable bodies of the fallen." On Sunday, February 28th, a common soldier led a donkey through the carnage, a corpse slung across its back, crying, "Who will buy Manfred?" Brought before Charles of Anjou, the man was ordered to show his prize. Count Tommaso of Caserta and the brothers Giordano and Bartolomeo Lancia identified the body. Giordano covered his face and wept. "Alas, alas, my lord." Some French knights begged that so valiant a foe be granted noble obsequies. Charles replied that he would have consented had Manfred not died under excommunication. Yet, as he informed the Pope the next day, he commanded that the corpse be buried honorably, if without religious rite. It was lowered into a shallow pit at the foot of the Benevento bridge, and every passing soldier cast a stone upon it, until a cairn arose over the fallen king. Manfred's defeat and the ruin of his army ended the Hohenstaufen dominion in Italy, and all but extinguished the Ghibelline cause. The kingdom of Sicily fell with scarcely a struggle. Ghibelline resistance lingered only in scattered pockets. Those who had summoned the French prince to break Manfred's yoke soon realized their folly. An anonymous chronicler laments, "O King Manfred, in those days we do not know you, but now thrice over we weep for you. We thought you a ravening wolf among the grazing sheep of this realm, yet now, beholding the present lordship that we desired through our own fickleness and levity, beguiled by lofty promises, we acknowledge that you were but a gentle lamb. Now we understand how sweet were the commands of your rule, while we taste those far more bitter of the other." It had taken 16 years and 3 popes, yet at last the papacy had achieved its aim. Manfred of Sicily lay dead. Southern Italy was in French hands, and the Pars Imperii stood grievously undermined. While the imperial house of the Hohenstaufen now rested in the hands of Conradino Suabia, a boy of scarcely 14. Tuscany was left to confront the one impulse that had consumed all who had opposed Ghibelline power in the wake of Montaperti: vengeance.